and got a few knuckleheads, but hopefully, hopefully you will learn at least something from some of these knuckleheads. And I do have, unfortunately, chords. Yeah, I will not roast them. You would not laugh probably even maybe once, but we have chords because there's a homeschooled play today. So everything is cleared off and we were a little nervous this morning, but if you want a microphone, you have one. We have 3. So it's up to you if you want to use a microphone. Chris, do you want a microphone?
No.
Okay. There you go. You're up, Chris.
I think Don's knees are shaking more than mine back there. That's why I get to go first. Well, I've got the 2 questions that I've got are, when you and your wife aren't on the same page with parenting, how do you resolve that? And then how do you stay on the same page? I'm going to flip those 2 questions around. I'm just going to start with kind of how my wife and I stay on the same page when it comes to parenting. And then I'm going to, at the end, answer when we're not on the same page, how to resolve that. So, I think for Christy and I, by the way, my wife's name is Christy. We've been married for 21 years, and we have 4 beautiful daughters. And so, being with a room full of women is not intimidating. I would say probably the number one thing that helps Christy and I stay on the same page is that I believe that Christy and I were fairly, what I would call, equally yoked when we got married. I think we both grew up in a very similar home, very similar environment, very similar perspectives when it comes to parenting. And so we were able to kind of come into our marriage kind of on the same page a little bit. So that was a big deal, I think, for us. But then I think one of the things that was really big for us early on in our marriages, when we first kind of moved to Sioux City and we started coming to Sunnybrook, Sunnybrook offered this class called Growing Kids God's Way. And that class really helped us a lot, provided a good foundation for us. When it came to parenting, it helped us get on the same page with some stuff that maybe we weren't on the same page with. And so that class was a big deal for us. And so I think that's something that we're going to be offering again here sometime in the near future here at Sunnybrook. So, but secondly, I think the thing that was really important for us is when we first had our first daughter, my dad gave me some pretty, I think, sound advice. And he said that, Chris, the best thing you can do as a parent, the best thing that you can do for your daughter is to love your mother. And from that point on, we kind of made this decision that our marriage was the most important thing. And that marriage had to come before parenting, before our children. And, I didn't really recognize the wisdom of that saying until later on down the road. As I started becoming an athletic trainer in high schools and began to see kids who were growing up in broken homes and being part of divorce, you begin to see how that affected kids. And I began to realize the wisdom of my dad and how the best thing that you can do for your kids is give them an example of a good marriage. And so that's for us is what I think is what lays the foundation for us being on the same page, recognizing that our marriage is the most important thing. And so out of that, we kind of developed some things that have been really beneficial for us when it comes to parenting. And so out of that, probably the number one rule we have at our house when it comes to parenting is thou shalt respect your mama. And so really that is the foundational rule when it comes to parenting in our home. And through this, what I've realized that I think a lot of guys, including myself, an area where I can struggle being passive is in the area of parenting. And so that rule in and of itself causes me to kind of step out of my own passivity and play my role as a husband and as a father, really to protect my wife. And so anytime that my girls want to talk back, they want to have attitude, they want to disrespect Christy, I will immediately step in between that and say, that is not going to happen. That is not allowed. You will respect your mother. And that really kind of comes down to tone of voice, the audibleness of their tone, and then also the words that they say. Anytime that there's any type of disrespect for my wife, I will step in between that and not allow it. And so, along with that, I think God has given men an authoritative voice for a reason, and there's something about the importance of a stern voice in discipline that goes a long ways. Another thing, two principles quickly that we learned from Growing Kids God's Way that has been fundamental for us in kind of keeping our marriage together is the most important thing. And one is couch time. And couch time is simply every single night. We don't do it every single night. We try to do it as often as we can. But try to spend 10 to 15 minutes on the couch together and tell the kids that, hey, this is mom and dad's time. You guys are, kind of Susie was talking about, hey, I need some time, and this is my time, and you need to go in the other room and respect that. And the kids need to see that mom and dad love each other. And the reason they talked about the importance of couch time was because the number one reason that kids usually have behaviors is because they're acting out of insecurity. And the number one place that a kid finds security is knowing that mom and dad love each other. And once they can trust that mom and dad love each other, they find security in that, and so they decrease their behaviors. And so couch time becomes a big part of establishing that. Then the third thing that we do to kind of stay on the same page is recognizing that parenting is difficult. I don't think there's anything that I probably pray about more in my own prayer life than my marriage and parenting and my kids. And just recognizing that parenting is difficult. It's emotionally draining. I can tell you I've been out on my front steps at 10 o'clock at night bawling my eyes out over parenting issues. But just recognizing that it's going to be hard. It's not easy, and that you have to make sure that you do a good job. But sometimes Christy will have a rough day parenting, and I'm going to do my part to encourage her. And someday I'm going to have a rough day parenting, and so like we just have to be there for each other and to encourage each other. And just encourage. Another thing that's I think has been so vital when it comes to parenting is just be consistent and be persistent, and hang in there and do it together. Because parenting is hard, and that's another book that's played a huge role in my life is called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, and it's really given me a lot of encouragement when it comes to parenting. So then the last question is, okay, what do we do when we're not on the same page, and how do we resolve that? I would say anytime that we're not on the same page, one of the first things that we do is we're going to go back to Growing Kids God's Way material and try to figure out, okay, if we disagree on something, where can we find common ground when it comes to Growing Kids God's Way? But then secondly, this is one thing that in parenting is I will never undermine my wife's authority in front of my children. I won't do that. Because there's a scripture in Mark chapter 3 that talks about how a house divided will not stand. And so, you guys all have kids, and you know how kids can do such a great job of playing one against the other, and they're going to do their best to divide you and cause you to not be on the same page. And so I will not undermine my wife's authority in front of my kids. And so if I disagree with something about parenting, I'm going to do it privately. And then in that moment, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to do what we can to compromise. And for us, even if, let's say we can't compromise, well, then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to seek out biblical wisdom on where we can find a compromise. And then ultimately, I would say the next best thing after that is we're going to go ask another couple who we trust and who might have dealt with, I know, honestly, we've had some great conversations with Don and Julie. They had teenagers before we did. And so we had some long parenting talks with Don and Julie. We used to be in a small group together, and it's a story I tell still today about some of the conversations we had when they were struggling with parenting and how I learned from them in the process. And so, but yeah, that's for us, just recognizing that I trust my wife. And so even if we disagree, when we talk about it, my wife is always very patient. She's a very wise woman. And it's very rarely that we can't come to some sort of compromise and ultimately end up agreeing on how we're going to approach this. But again, I'm going to do that in private in order to respect her and to know that our kids know that, hey, we're a united front when it comes to parenting. And so, and then if that doesn't work, it's going to be a lot of prayer. A lot of prayer goes into parenting, and a lot of searching out God's Word and searching out other Christian couples that can guide us along the way. So, there you go.
You guys are in charge.
Where do you want me to go?
Does anybody else have anything on Chris's question?
I can just say that, Chris talked about just having other people around and seeking some, higher counsel and experience. And, just real quick comment, I think that all successful parents, have that in their lives. They all have that couple or that person that they can go to and just say, man, are we doing okay? Are we headed in the right direction? Or is this all falling apart? And I don't, I can say, I guess that maybe I'm like third generation, because I've known to Chris, I'm like, Chris, we're pulling our hair out, man. Like, so before I don't have any left, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and across the table, you're doing good. So I think to just have that vulnerability, and encourage that.
I think also too to be humble. I know too, Chris is talking about my family, and just to give you a brief about me. Married almost 23 years. My daughter is 26 years old. So I came into a relationship with two, just not with. And trying to make sure we're on the same page, me and my wife. And how do you raise somebody again, I doubt, and how does that work in parenting? One of the things that Chris said, your spouse and you have to be on the same page. And it's you and your spouse. Your spouse is number one. And what was very encouraging to me as knowing my wife, that I was her really number two from God, and then me, and then Leslie. We love Leslie dearly, but again, to parent, you can't put your daughter over your husband because there will be conflicts coming in. And I give so much credit to my wife for loving me and respecting me. One of the other things that come in, and when I talk about being humble, is we had our teenage daughter was going through a lot of conflicts. And we thought we were the worst parents. How do we deal with this? How do we move on? We were both just crushed. And when you have that, your marriage starts breaking apart a little bit because the conflict is there. What we did is humble, and we got a group of couples to counsel us. We had, probably on Thursday night, we had 8 different couples that were there. Chris and Christy were there. We had the other 7 couples. They prayed for us. They gave us advice. We opened up everything of how we were parenting and what was going on. And it just gave us a relief, but also an encouragement to keep on going. They kept on asking how we were doing and encouraging us. And you need that for parenting. You need that prayer. You need to be humble. You need to say, I need help and I need suggestions.
When you had mentioned that if the girls are disrespectful to your wife, is there a discipline or is it just an attitude check?
Typically I'm just going to step in and just verbally say, hey, that's not acceptable. You will not talk to your mother that way. And immediately they'll kind of change their tone of voice. If it would be something that would continue after I would say that, then there would be consequences. And typically I've got mostly teenagers in the house right now. And it's going to be some sort of phone, iPad, some sort of privilege that's going to hit them where it counts. That's going to be part of the counseling.
I was just going to say, I like that because our kids are still really young, so we haven't gotten into this stuff yet. The back and forth because they're both 2.5 and younger. So all we've done is we've talked about stay on the same page with priorities. You go to the scripture, and the scripture will tell you, what your priorities are in everything in life. And it does it in many ways. Sometimes it'll go on about stuff. It'll mention it many times. A lot of times your pastor will say, love is mentioned this many times in the Bible, or money is mentioned this many times. For us, our priority is honoring your father and mother, along with respecting the Sabbath. Those are the 2 commandments mentioned more than all the rest throughout the whole Bible. And respecting your parents is also the only commandment that has the promise that goes with that. If you respect your mother and father, things will go well with you. And everybody wants things to go well with their kids. And sometimes we get caught up in the little stuff of, if they'll do this, then they'll be set for this. If they do this right, they'll do this right. But really, if we can get them and raise them from the beginning to set your priorities out, agree on your priorities, then you'll always be on the same page. And we only got 24 hours in the day. I know I'm going to get our kids to do everything we want them to do, but our number one priority is that they honor us because, in the long run, that's what we want. We want them to be blessed too.
Follow that real quick with what Eric said. One thing I've seen really to be true, and this is something Growing Kids God's Way teaches as well, is that basically probably the most important impressionable years that you have as parents is when your kids are younger. Basically from when they're 0 to 5 years old is kind of this window that you have to establish the rules and the principles and the foundations and the guidelines when it comes to parenting. Those first 5 years are absolutely critical. If you haven't established what you need to establish in those first 5 years, when they're teenagers, you'll have lost control. And you won't be able to get it back. And it'll be really, really, really hard. And so I just want to encourage you, those who have little kids, I've seen a lot of guys who will be very passive with a 2 and 3 year old when they're having behavior problems, and there's just something that doesn't seem right about disciplining a 2 or 3 year old child. But I'm telling you, if you don't do it now, you will, by the time they're junior high and high school, will be twice as hard. I guarantee you.
One thing I was going to add is Don alluded to the fact that both parents really need to put one another first. I think that's really important. And I think it's also very challenging for young parents because I think particularly young women, you're raising your children. Those children are the most important things in your life. And I think there's a tendency sometimes to elevate the child or the children over things that are going on with your spouse. And I think sometimes with the guys, it's they elevate work, going, the things they have to do, and they elevate that sometimes over being with their spouse. One of the things that I think is important to remember is when those kids are out of the house, it's going to be the two of you again. So it's important to remember that relationship is very important. And like you talked about, you're modeling that for your children. If they see either mom or dad placing somebody else in a more important role than their spouse, they may fall into that same trap when they go. And they start looking at marriage themselves. So I think that's a very important point.
Is anybody wishing their other half was here so you could elbow them?
Okay, again, my name is Don Van Dyke. I've been married almost 23 years. My wife is named Julie. She is a kindergarten teacher at Sergeant Bluff. I have a daughter that is in 6th and just got married a year and a half ago. She is a special ed teacher down at Mobile. And then I have a son that is ready to turn 22, and he is going to morning psychology regular and move back into the house. So we are not empty nesters anymore. We have somebody back in the house. What I'm going to head and did here is, my question was, respect is important to most men. What are some of the ways your wife can show you respect? When I got that question, me and my wife started talking about this, and I asked her some questions. Why do you respect me? And we went in conversation for a couple days. But what I really looked at was, what does respect look like to me? And then I made a top 10 list that we just handed out. So we're going to go through that list. You can have questions, let me know. But the first thing I want to put on is my definition of respect that I started looking at. When a person values another opinion, thoughts, characteristics, actions, then treats that person with dignity. It shows how valuable that person is to others. And really what I look at here too is it shows me value, that I have value in the family, that I'm important in the family. And my top 10 list, and I'm going to stand up and walk around because I get less nervous that way if we can. And you guys jump in on these lists. So this is my top 10. Now, again, this is just what I put down the other day. This is not for all men. This is just mine right now. My number 10 one is, let me do man things. Okay? And again, we'll add into that later on, but I'm going to read through the list. Number 9, appreciate me when I'm willing to help and not complain what I did wrong. Okay? Number 8, let me lead and make decisions. Number 7, let me know that my thoughts are important.
6, being unified with decisions about our children. Let me fail with dignity, don't rub it in. Addressing the situation with thoughtful words when disagreeing. Number 3, don't put me down in front of others, especially with her friends and our children. Build me up in front of friends and family. Number 2, understand my weakness, encouraging me and building me up. And number 1, show unconditional love, even if respect is not deserved, in spite of. Those are my top 10s. And any questions on those, or why they're in my top 10s, or why that makes a difference that I'm respected that way? No questions about the man things? Yes? First one on that one there, and that was probably looking at number 9. Appreciate when I'm willing to help, not complaining. And some of those that I look at, and what I put it in is, if I am willing to help with laundry, or do dishes, and do those items, is that, again, if I go ahead and I'm willing to help, and I just don't do it just the way my wife wants it, and tells me different, my first thought is, I'm not going to help you. Okay, it's just my thoughts. It's just, you know, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do the best I can. Now, what happens is, if she wants to change, is my wife very good? She subtly lets me know, I am doing a great job, but can you do this for me? Okay, and then gradually, I will change because I'm feeling appreciated for what I'm doing, but also I will start changing because it's that subtle love talking to me, saying, hey, can you do this differently? Any questions on guys on that?
I just say, you know what, we're like kids in the sense that give us easy tasks. Like, can you carry in the groceries? I can do that. You know, you ask me to like press clothes, I'm probably going to fail with vigor. But it's, we want to help. But give us, we are, at least I won't share these sentiments. Most men they're afraid to fail.
Yes.
So when we get called out, the chances of us going back and redoing that, even the littlest of tasks, is we won't dive into it. It's like going swimming and everybody says, hey, this water is great. You dip in and it's like polar plunge. You go, I ain't doing that again. And I just think that just give us simple tasks that we can support you and help you. Be honest, be honest, but be genuine. But give us tasks that give us the opportunity to serve you without failure. So that would be the one thing, I guess. And we're going to fail. We're going to screw it up. But I always say, you know, if I'm not cleaning the house right, just when I go downstairs to my man cave, just do whatever I didn't do right, and I don't need to know about it, and just boom. And she's been really great about that. So just give us the opportunity to fail, or give us the opportunity to succeed, and we'll continue to. We're pretty easy. Give us a treat, which I'll talk about in intimacy later. I don't want these guys to steal. I don't know how I got intimacy, but I don't want these guys to steal a lot of my good ideas. That's down the road.
My approach to that would be respect me enough to let me fail. I guess what I mean by that is a lot of times a guy wants to make a decision and kind of lead, and yet my wife will maybe disagree with my decision. But yet I feel like my wife does a good job in respecting me. You know what? You made the decision, even though she knows that I'm probably wrong. She's going to go ahead, do it. And she loves me enough to not just sit there and disagree with me, but just to go and let me fail. And I think, and she knows that I'll learn probably more from my failure than I would from her giving me the wisdom to do it right. And so I think there's just times where I appreciate that about my wife, where she goes, you know what, my wife does a pretty good job at picking her battles. And I think she just recognized there are some things that aren't worth arguing about. So you know what, even though I know you're wrong, I'm going to let you do it. And she respects me enough to let me fail. And I appreciate that.
Now, I'd kind of add, maybe redirect a little bit if you think that, maybe an answer to your question, if we're doing something wrong, if you've asked us to fold the laundry or something like that, and you think we're doing it wrong, and maybe just kind of gently say, suggest that we try it a different way. And most of us will at least try to do it the way that you want us to. We'll probably forget immediately and resume doing it the way we normally do it, but we'll try.
And the best approach usually is ask me, don't tell me. That's me.
Oh, I was going to say the exact opposite.
Oh.
I say, I think men want to know that in their home they have the final say. If you can give your man the final say, I think he'll appreciate that. But for me, when I come home, I make decisions all day. We're blessed enough my wife can stay home. I get home, I don't want to make decisions anymore. I want to let her make most of those decisions. And I trust her to make those decisions. I know that, something, on a big deal, big question, big item type thing, we'll discuss it. When it comes down to it, I know I have the final say, and I appreciate that. But, when I come home, I don't even want to be asked to bring the groceries in. I want to be told. Not, can you bring groceries in? Go get the groceries. Okay, good. I don't have to make a decision. I can just go. And I tell my wife, I'm like, just tell me what to do because you know me. If you tell me to do something that I have a problem with, I'm going to let you know. But other than that, just tell me what you want me to do and tell me how to do it, and we'll close the day out. So
I think that's a good example of you got to learn to know what your husband needs and how to approach it. It's very different.
Two, with the respect. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Don, don't get mad when I say this, because I'm like trying to work it out in my head how to say it without being offensive.
Just blunt. Lay it out. We're guys, man. Just give it to us straight, sister.
Okay, so you've been talking about trying to, build you up, and because we've had this discussion in my house and in our marriage, and a lot of the ways that you're saying is the same way that my husband's talking about being respectful, but a lot of that in my mind is how, I would treat a child. I'm going to build up a child, oh, you did such a, oh, that was so great, honey, I don't think of doing that stuff for a man. I think of that as doing that for my kid.
Well, when you ask us if that dress makes your behind look big, don't we
Just
kind of do the same thing? Treat one another gently in some, situations like that.
Okay.
The thing with my big thing is affirmation. Okay, so it is. My wife knows that. So even today, coming in, I'm so nervous here, and I'm sitting here, how am I going to talk, and do this? Because I don't do this very often. And first thing she's saying, Don, you'll do a great job. I know you. Don't fear about it. And she's building me up. So at that time, I'm coming in here. Yes, I'm nervous, but I know that my wife unconditionally loves me. Even if I fail here and not do a good job, when I come home, she thinks I did the best job ever. And that's the unconditional love. So to me, it is building it up. Like you said, it's kind of like a child a little bit. Yeah, after we start talking as a group, yeah, you're right. It's kind of a different building up in a child too. But our biggest thing is we want to know that, for me, I can't say for me, is I want to know that I'm providing and I'm doing a good job of leading the house and with the kids and the wife, that she respects me in that area. And another thing with me with respect is this respect, we have two different things. When I see some of these things here, I love my wife more. I give her more. And 22 years of marriage right now, it's not, when you're young, you aren't going to see it right away. Because the first thing of respect that I got on my list, do what I say. When I first wrote it down, the first thing a young man says and how they're brought up in this world sometimes is, when I get married or I have a thing, my wife has nothing to say. I have that. When you start growing, you understand that's totally different. If you want a great marriage and you are a true man, you start realizing that's a growth. I've been 22 years. We're still dealing with some of these ones here. It will never get perfected, but I know my wife loves me unconditionally, and she's going to keep on building me up. And I do it the same thing the other way. I love her unconditionally, but I also have to build her up in the ways that she is. Her different ways, different love things that you have to do. So you're building your spouses up in both ways to be one. Probably went on a little long, I'm sorry.
Okay, I have, is the way your wife dresses important to you? Why or why not? When I first read the question, my first thought was, no. I like the way she dresses, I always have. Even today, I appreciate the clothes she wore. So no, it's not important. But then I started thinking, if she changed something or if that went away, well then yeah, then it would be important to me at that point. I know that there's two scriptures in the New Testament that address women's fashion. They both pretty much say the same thing, and I know they're used a lot to maybe establish clothing doctrine. But when you look at them closely, the first one, 1 Timothy, when it's talking about what she should wear, it's talking about when she's praying, or like when she's attending church, and that really is a lot more specific guidance on what to wear. And some people may interpret from that verse. The other one's from 1 Peter, and he's not prohibiting certain fashion or apparel. What Peter's telling us is don't let your clothes be the things that you think make you beautiful. And what Peter's saying is the age-old adage that beauty comes from within. So outside of that, both these verses, like I said, if you look hard, a lot of time the answers are there for us. Both these verses run side by side, talking about patriarchal authority, which we kind of been touching on. The man's position as head of household. So I think when it comes to clothing and what women wear, I think it really comes down to what does your husband want you to wear? How does he want you to dress? What does he like to see you in, both in public and in private? You can have these discussions with them. Some guys might want their wife to tone it down in public, and other guys might want to show his wife off and say, wear something elegant or classy. And I think your husband he's the one that's there to answer your question about what should I be wearing, or is what I'm wearing tonight appropriate, and all that stuff. And I think that's, in general, I think that's how our lives are supposed to be. We live in a post-crucified Christ world, and we're all seeking our own guidance from God. We don't have the strict ritual laws like we used to, and it's going to be different for people. And I think that's some of the freedom that Christ tried to bring us was, letting people walk the path that God's given them, not walk all the same path. So I would just say, have a discussion with your husband. And now we can get into other topics about, private apparel and fashion, and should it be done, and is it recommended, and stuff like that. But I'm not going to get into that until somebody asks. That's kind of all I wanted to say about that. Anybody have any questions?
Can you do my intimacy part? Oh, I'm supposed to tell you, you're doing my intimacy.
I'm going to jump in on this one here. It's been interesting in my marriage for 22 years.
have to say has grown. One of the things that I like to see my wife elegant. That's a big thing that I look at. But what's always happened here in my family with my wife, both of us are now at this point is we're dressing for each other. So when my wife comes out, I'm dressing for her, what do you think? And I know that she looks elegant, and she puts those clothes on, and I'm just beaming out there. So she's not dressing for somebody else, she's dressing for me. But I do like to see her elegant. The things that she does, I think elegant women are more pretty than what we see in, what I'm going to say, more floozy. I mean, I look at that gives a whole different aspect to a man than somebody that's very elegant. So it's in our household is what's neat right now. My wife comes to me and she brings clothes, she goes, how do I look? And so I sit there and watch, and she's just beaming when she looks at, and it's the elegance. So when she goes out, she feels good about herself. So for me, is making her feel good about herself and what she wears and when she goes out, that she knows that she's elegant, inside and out.
How many, just so I know the audience, is how many of you are work outside the home, are professionals? A few of you? Okay. The most frustrating thing for me is seeing my wife get all dolled up to go out to the marketplace and see guys seeing her better than I see her at home. I don't think that's fair. And I really tell her that, is because how is it that some other, she works with a bunch of guys, by the way, which is okay. Cover that later. The whole point of this is if she's willing to dress herself up and somebody gets to see her and admire her for 8 hours and I may get her for 4, the balance, the equilibrium is not fair to me. It's just not. And I don't ask a lot. I understand that Saturdays we clean house, and I understand that clean house is a good sweat time. I think that how I view that is I want her to at least give an effort to make herself look beautiful for me. She's beautiful regardless, but I think I would expect, you guys would expect us to put our best foot forward, right? When we dress and we groom and we look good. Same thing on the other side, is we want our ladies to look like queens, because at the end of the day, we're the kings and we want to go and slay dragons for our queens. And I think that's just it. So for me, when I see my wife leave, she jokes about this, but I really will call out if there is something that's loose fitting, can I address it? Shows maybe a little too much cleavage, I'll call it out. I said, I'm telling you what, if you go right through there and you bend over, you're going to have every guy in your cubicle looking. And I said, I have a problem with that. I mean, it's just how we're wired. I'm just telling you. Just be mindful of those things, even when you're out shopping or going out in the general public. It's just something to be mindful of.
It just brings it back to, I think, what you got to understand. I don't know how many women get this, but guys are visual, period. And we're attracted, we're stimulated visually. And so what you wear matters in the workplace. And so you're flirting with some stuff. To me, I'm with Bert, and dress matters in the workplace because men are attracted to things that are visual. And so you may think that you're dressing to look beautiful, and I get that, but men are visual, and so you may be attracting some unwanted attention.
Yeah, and the term I use is celebrate your femininity, whether public, private, or both. But it always comes down to what's your husband comfortable with. I've traveled a lot, so I've seen all kinds of different cultural approaches to fashion. But I appreciate the ones that, where the women want to be women, and the men want to be men. And if you're going to celebrate your femininity, one of the best ways you can do that is through clothing and fashion. And it's just remind you that, hey, my husband's the guy and I'm the girl, and we're different. And just talk it over with your husband and figure out she like to see it? Does he like to see it at all? Just asking.
So then I got a question. So then if you see another woman in your workplace with some cleavage, do you guys turn the other cheek or do you stare at them?
That's a whole other panel.
I will answer that question for you. One of the things is, me and Chris had a conversation probably a good 8-10 years ago. And one of the things is when we're in small groups, when I'm in small groups, we talk about this. In the small group sometimes that I have is accountability partner. I have two things. Where am I at with God, where am I at with my wife, and where am I at with my kids. Okay? And those are the questions that we ask. Well, me and Chris were talking one time, is what do we do when somebody has, we see an attractive woman? First thing you do, turn away. And get your mind off and go. I have done that now for 8 to 10 years since we've met. It's something that I physically, because I love my wife, I don't want to get in there, but I turn my head. But it's tough. When somebody is wearing the dress, well cut, we are attracted to that. We're very visual. But again, it depends on where you're in your faith and how strong you are. But it does, you can get attracted very fast. And then that first attraction is looking. The next thing is flirting. Okay? And we as men also have to know that what to stay away with. But we ask you also, don't help the situation and try to attract this by the way what you wear.
I think what you got to realize is that whole situation is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Men have a responsibility. What Don's talking about is I believe that, you see in the old Seinfeld episode, there's one thing about being in the field of vision, but it's the second look and it's the prolonged look that gets prolonged. But then at the same time, I think the lady has a responsibility to know that men are visual, so please don't tempt us. It's the way God wired us, so we have our responsibility for, yes, taking responsibility for that. I also think women have a responsibility for how they do it.
We have 20 minutes and 3 more questions, so we probably should move on.
Go Jill.
All right.
Love it.
My name is Joe Barnes, and I'm native Sioux City, pastor of Bridges Church here in town. And yeah. I'm just privileged to be here. This is great. I love the discussion. I wasn't sure what it was going to be, if we were going to be like standing behind pulpits or tables, and this is really cool. Just the openness of it all. I'll tell you a little bit about my day so far. Woke up this morning with my beautiful wife Katrina, and alarm went off at about 5:45ish, and we were laying there trying to get out of bed, and our 1-year-old was throwing up in his crib. So we proceeded to get him up. This is just kind of giving you an idea of where I'm at in the stages of my life quickly. So we got him up, got him cleaned up, and he threw up again, except he was in our bed this time, and so it was all over my pillows, and so we picked him up and proceeded to put him in the bathtub, and my wife Katrina got him all cleaned up, and I actually had a cup of coffee in my hand, so I was working my way out the door, or working my way towards getting a shower and dressed, and so she got him all cleaned up and passed him over to me, and he threw up all over himself again. I thought, man, where is this stuff coming from? We haven't even eaten breakfast yet. And then he threw up again on the couch. So I've been thrown up on once today, maybe twice. As I was walking out the door, my wife was sitting with a precious little 1-year-old with a bowl under his chin, like waiting for him. Actually, I think he was throwing up as I was hearing me and my wife Katrina had 3 beautiful kids. A girl that's Isabel's 5, little Emma that's 4. So we had 2 really close together. And then I finally got my boy a year ago, and he's been a blessing even today.
How did you do that?
Oh, yeah, well, that's where I'll get into my question. This question really stuck out to me, and it's how do you de-stress after a long day at work? Then the second part of it is how can your wife make that easier for you? So my hope is just to give you something very practical to walk away with, to hopefully bring some peace to your home. Because when we had our 2 girls really close together, my wife came out on the end of that with postpartum depression. So I can blame everything that was happening on her. We had a diagnosis and everything, but it worked out great. We ended up just getting some great counsel and talking through that, and it really helped us just identify some of the little things that were happening from day to day in our home as we were trying to raise little ones, and it was almost like having twins, probably. One of the major things was, I still had to go to work, right? Of course, I just couldn't stay home and help all the time like I wanted to. So when I would come home, it felt like things would erupt, and it felt like I could never do anything right. And so one of the things that we started to talk through was me de-stressing at the end of the day so that I could come in with the right mindset. I tend to be a very intense person, just by nature, as part of my personality, and I just naturally brought my work home with me, and just kind of wanted to unload on my poor wife sometimes. And I had to learn that I just couldn't do that. Sometimes there was a time and a place, but typically it wasn't, 5:30, 6 o'clock after she had been home with babies all day, and all that stuff. So just, a couple real practical things that I started to do. The number one thing that I love to do is I go to the gym before I go home and try to create a buffer. Even if I can get in there for like 30 minutes to 45 minutes and just decompress. If I don't have time to do that, which happens a lot, I'll sit in the driveway and adjust my mindset as much as I can. And I'll just try to table the things that I just walked away from at work, so that I can walk in with a mindset of wanting to, I call it a being at home mindset, which a lot of it is me being quiet when I walk away. And I really try. I don't succeed at this every day, but my goal is to just listen to my wife to see where she's at, to hear and try to identify what her needs are. Sometimes she just needs to leave, and so I do everything I can just to take over what she's doing and make her and let her go if she wants to go. That's huge for her. Maybe she needs to go to the gym, maybe she didn't make it that morning or something like that. It's not perfect, but it's a daily thing. It's become a habit for me, just adjusting the mindset. Another thing that I try to get into my brain is that one thing I've learned is not to expect my wife to be a certain way when I come home. My wife, Katrina, we've been married for 7 years, and when I came into the relationship, I realized right away, and I'll just confess this to you, that I was just very chauvinistic. I was very dictator-like, and I was the type of guy that expected dinner on the table, when I got home, and things to be perfect. And when she didn't have that ready to go, man, I put the hammer down, and was very vocal, and used my tongue to speak into her life, and it was very damaging. And we've had to spend some time recovering from that. One of the things that we did when we were getting counsel was we got into some basic personality stuff, just to learn about ourselves and learn about each other. We're both very extroverted. My wife is like the most fun person to be around ever, and she's a blast. I'm extroverted too, and so we love to go out. That's how we get energized. We get away together and we go out. My wife is super enthusiastic and loves to fly by the seat of her pants. She's very gifted in that area. And I'm not. And so I've had to learn, that schedules stress my wife out. And she's had to learn that her giftedness in just going for it can stress me out. So it was just some really good basic things for us to learn. So let me get into the second part. Any questions right out of the chute with that?
I guess talking about schedules, my husband doesn't like schedules either, and I'm very schedule oriented. How do you meet in the middle?
Chris has been using the word compromise all day, and I think a lot of that falls on the scheduler to compromise. And one thing I tell myself is, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, you know. And learning to encourage her, for me, that schedules are healthy and that it's okay, you know. Like for instance, our budget can really be a mess sometimes because she's very spontaneous. She's gifted in that. So, you know, we follow the Dave Ramsey plan, and we run an envelope system, and so we started a spontaneity envelope. You know, so there's just, you gotta be creative, and you gotta be gracious, you know. And that's what I was going to say as I explained to my wife, you know, just learning to be more loving as a husband. My wife has been, she has been grace incarnate to me from God, teaching me about flexibility and grace and kindness and love, you know. She is my gift, you know, that God has given me to learn just about being flexible, you know. And when I started to see her like that, man, just the whole new worlds opened up. And my relationship with God got better as I started to see her in that way, rather than a burden or somebody that got me there late all the time, or someone, you know, like we don't have 2 cars just for convenience. It's just so I can get to places. We say that, you know, we have 3 kids, and so she gets a 30-minute buffer. She gets 10 minutes for each kid to get there. It was classic. It happened Easter morning. I wanted to go to church with my family. You know, as a pastor, I kind of got to be there before the doors opened. So we planned, and we got rid of our youngest one, and so we just had 4 and 5-year-old. And man, she did a great job of getting everybody ready. It's time to go, and she's standing in the dining room, and she hasn't done anything to herself. And we're like standing there with the diaper bag, and you know, we're all prettied up, and I had to put her first. It was really difficult. I had a band up on stage waiting for me. I had, you know, 10 tech people waiting for me to get there. My wife needed my flexibility. And so I went in the other room and kind of paced a little bit just to, and I said, okay, honey, you got 3 minutes. Ready?
Okay, we're gonna go. Okay.
One more thing. This is practical. I just lost my notes. So let me just share this because, and I'll wrap it up, and then you guys can clap. Because in a word, okay, if you remember anything, okay, if you walk away from listening to my ranting, in a word, perspective. It's all about perspective, you know. And I think that when it comes to decompression, you know, it comes from stress and relationship and family and stuff. The key is really recognizing what is going on and how we are supposed to act. And I really felt like I wanted to share the scripture. That's why I said we interrupted you, Brandon. Didn't let you go yet. Because this speaks to wives and husbands, and this just really has given me something to hold on to when things get stressful and friction is happening. Helps me step away and just know how I'm supposed to act. Because I think so many times, so much naturally, we are elbowing and saying, well, if you had just acted like this, then we wouldn't fight all the time. Or, you know, things wouldn't be stressful when I got home. Well, you're responsible for you. And you have a responsibility to God, I think, even for how you act. And my wife taught me that. And she is a pro. She's a pro. I can see her, Ephesians 6, about where it says, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but it's against the principalities of darkness. When we start to engage in a stressful or friction moment, I can see her mind going there. My battle's not against Joe. My battle, it's not about this argument. You know, there's some supernatural things that are attacking us right now. And that takes us from a fight to, okay, how do we work through this? So let me just give you some real specific instruction out of 1 Peter chapter 3. And addresses wives first, and then it gets into some great stuff about husbands. So it says, wives in the same way be submissive to your husbands, so so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of your wives, when they see the purity and the reverence of your lives. And my wife found this verse, and it became the most frustrating thing for me, because I like to fight. And all of a sudden, she became quiet. And I'll tell you what, there was nothing more life-changing for me as she began to really depend on God to change my heart, compared to her trying to convince me to do better. Okay? And then this gets really specific. And we talked a little bit about this. It says, your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and the wearing of gold jewelry and clothes, fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is a great word in God's sight. So even if your husband doesn't respect you, if you are able to step back and be quiet, God loves that, and it pleases Him. Okay? So now, one more thing, and this is how you can be praying for your husband. Okay? This is how you can be, one thing my wife has chosen to do for me, and I feel the effects, is just go to God in prayer for me, that the Holy Spirit will change me and work on my heart. And verse 7 in 1 Peter 3 says this, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as a weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. And I underline to be considerate as you live with your wives. So for those of you who are married, I really encourage you to pray for your husbands. And if the engaging in conflict is not working like you have been hoping it would work, look at the bigger picture. And it's about pleasing God. And own up to the responsibility that you have, rather than, casting blame. Because that's, I think, what would naturally do. Okay.
Joe actually is a great leader. Give him applause. These guys really covered my talk, so I can really cut this down to like 2 minutes. My name is Vern Meyer, and my wife and I, Aileen, have been married 20 years come June, and we have 2 special needs child. One, Corinne, who is Down syndrome, and a 14-year-old who is high-functioning autistic, and then we have another 9-year-old. So, like Chris, I'm all part of the all-girls club. This is not intimidating, I get it. So this is a good these are fantastic points from these guys, and we're not vulnerable. We're being vulnerable today. But Joe really hit the point where I really want to talk about the question, which is, what are some important things for your wife to know when it comes to being intimate? And I joke on this first line it's really 2 things: food and sex, or a combination of both. That's the perfect So
I'm never coming over to your house on a Saturday.
Please do not. Particularly Saturday morning. This is a true story. It was like clockwork. Saturday morning is kind of our most intimate time together. It's like Saturday morning, I don't have to go to work. She doesn't have to go to work. We're not rushed for church. So Saturday morning is really our time for what Chris called couch time. I call pillow time. This is me time. This is like lock the door, kick out the dogs, turn off the phones. And literally for a running period of time, for like 3 straight weeks, her friend would call in the middle of us having an intimate moment. I'm like, what are you doing? And, but anyway, so intimacy is really broken down to 2 things. Really, it's emotional and it's physical. And believe it or not, guys are emotional, intimate creatures. For example, is how can you best show respect for your husband? One, obviously, we've already talked about. But I think it's important is we like hobbies. And the other thing that I really would want my wife to really show that she is intimate with me is, yes, having sex is easy because it's an exchange and a transaction. But if you really want to get intimate with your man, you have to go and meet him where he's at. So sometimes I love to golf. And I have forever, for the past 5 years, tried to get my wife to come out and golf. But she's a perfectionist. So if she can't do it well, she's not going to dare to try. And I said, I tell you what, I promise if you go out golfing with me, I won't even ask you to swing the club if you would just drive the car. That's all I'm asking you to do. So this summer, that's our goal. Because you're our partner. You're our mate. You're our best friend. So when you dive into our world, I guarantee you, when she gets on the golf course, if she wants to go shopping, like we did this last weekend in Chicago, I'll go with her, and I'll do it gleefully, okay? So the intimacy for guys is to get into our worlds, also understand what we like, get into our hobbies. If your husband invites you to go do something, even though it challenges you and it's out of your comfort zone, I want to encourage you to go do it, okay? Step out of your box a little bit and go in comfort zone and go be with your man. Because I think those are opportunities where you say, I don't get time to spend with you. Well, guess what? I've offered that you're not willing to come with me because it may not be yours own. So my wife knows my two love languages are physical touch, not in that way, but literally snuggle time. Yeah, I love pillow time. I love Saturday mornings where I get to cuddle up with her, and every morning we get to just, for no other reason, we get to embrace, so she knows that if she doesn't come back, our last words together were, we spent time together. So I think that's important that you hug or give your man a sign that you care for them and that you're excited they're going out and being a champion for you. Okay? And likewise, the guys has to come back and the intimacy has to come back, be reciprocal. But how you want to feed a man really it's really easy. It truly is. We're physical creatures. We're like Chris said, we're visual characters. And I think if you feed those things, your man will gravitate to you. And I think what happens, and I'll share this with you, my wife, I can say this to you, is I said to her last night, I said, where do I go with this? Because this could go down many avenues. And she says, I give you full permission to share whatever you want to share. So I'm going to share this. I'm going to be rude. Don't you guys, please don't embarrass her that I brought this up. So if you know my wife, please don't embarrass her. But she gave me the green light, so here it is. So we're in Chicago, and her cycle is coming up. So it's really tough when you have kids, and you got all this stuff going on. And I had tried to get a little frisky with her before we went because we knew we were going to be around all kinds of family and friends and people and kids and travel and all that good stuff. And so it didn't work out. So she knew I was disappointed. And we got to the hotel. And she went in and I got the kids kind of all situated and got them into their beds. It was about, they're getting ready to settle down. And she's going in for an evening shower. And she says, hey, can you come in here for a minute? I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe she needs something. And she literally pulled me into the shower. And I didn't know what to do. Because she is not a spontaneous, someone said a scheduler. She likes to schedule stuff. I'm spontaneous. And what she did is she said, I care about your needs, that I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone to meet your needs. And so when she came back home, because I had to come back Easter, she came back and last night I said, you know what, I never properly shared with you my gratitude for that event. Because I knew that as a huge challenge for her. She took a leap of faith. And for me not to recognize that would be a disservice to what she was feeding to me. And that's the intimate part. And I'm more willing now to clean the house, cook, ask her if there's anything I can pick on. Feed me a treat, I'll come back, spoil the dog. Just tell me what I need to do. So I guess to really sum it up is Erwin McManus said it best. It said, intimacy can really be defined as into me see. Get into my world and see me for where I'm at and come join me in that journey. And it may not always be reciprocal, but I can guarantee, trust in the fact that if you are praying for your husband, like Joe said, if you're praying for your husband to be changed, and you serve him in that way, and even though it's not comfortable or easy, I'm telling you, he will come around. because he's got two things. You got two things on your side. You're serving his greatest need, and you got God on your side. And when you got those two things going for you, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. So, that's it.
I'll try to make mine really quick. My name's Craig Lane. I'm married to Tammy Lane, right over here. I'm an attorney here in Sioux City. We've been married for 31 years, and so that's... we definitely had some of the same struggles I've been hearing a lot of people talk about today. And one of the primary things I would say that is really important to being married and to having a good marriage is kind of what we've been alluding to. Respect for one another, even when you disagree. Try to have respect. Show respect. And I don't mean necessarily to us. We need to show respect to you as well. And I think that's a critically important thing. I think even when you're having disagreements, when you think the other person's wrong, when you're having fights about your kids or your finances, if you respect one another, you've got a much better chance. That along with prayer. As long as your faith is, if you're working on your faith, and if you're a unified couple with God, I think that increases your odds of being successful just dramatically. Real briefly, my topic was, as men, do you feel like you need to be the breadwinner? I think lines have been a little bit more blurred over the years about who's the breadwinner, who's not the breadwinner. There's a lot of women these days that are the breadwinner, and a lot of men, that do stay home with children more often than there used to be back in the past. I think sometimes I just thought there's probably a couple of guys out there that are thinking, well, it'd be nice to be a cat man, have my wife work all the time, I'll just stay home. And then I probably envision that those same guys would be watching ESPN, Big Ten Network football games and eating Doritos as the kids are in the other room. So I'm not so sure that that would actually work out to be a good thing, but at any rate, we're, as guys, we're brought up by our parents, our fathers, our grandfathers. They were all breadwinners most of the time. And even our mothers and our grandmothers were teaching us that we need to be breadwinners. So we're raised to